Well, my truck was just a little bit too loud, so I decided to build this muffler from scratch. Stay tuned and you'll see how.
Alright, let's get started today. But to begin with, we need to consider the kinds of mufflers that there are out there available.
There's largely two main types of mufflers that we have. We'll have the typical OEM style, which actually uses baffles, and this is the kind that you find on pretty much any stock application. These generally have a little bit more back pressure and resistance. A lot of higher performance applications, you'll get what's called a Glasspack. These operate a little bit on a different principle. The way these work is that they are essentially just a tube that has a bunch of holes in it and whatnot, and it's surrounded by basically a bunch of really just like fiberglass or some sort of absorptive material. Now, for simplicity's sake, this is what I'm going to be building because it's a lot easier than having to figure out exactly where to put the baffles and everything of that sort.
To begin with, I've already established that I want this muffler to be about 7 inches in diameter. So what that means is that, give or take, I need to have 1.5 inches above and around every side of my 4-inch pipe. So let me go ahead and set my tape measure out just a little bit. So I got 2 inches right there, too, okay. But the main thing you need to do is check up top here for clearancing and whatnot. So let's put this up here, and at the very top, you can only have more than enough. I have a good 2 inches, so that will hopefully account for this bobbing up and down and whatnot. But what I also need to do now is I need to mark out exactly where I want this muffler to be and everything, because I'm actually going to be using this pre-existing pipe that I have on the straight pipe as the core of the muffler itself.
Okay, I'm actually going to start this process by finishing up drawing these lines. As you've seen me use before, I'm using just a piece of cardboard. This is as cheap as it gets that you can make somewhat straight lines with. So I'll mark that. Okay, so this section here that we're looking at is going to be the perforated tube for the section in the center of the Glasspack itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make it look somewhat nice. So I'm going to use my cardboard. Again, it's a straight edge, and I'm going to draw an eyeball in and draw some lines. Alright, I've got my lines all roughly marked out. Got the cutoff wheel on the grinder. And I'm going to go ahead and start making a series of slots along here, along these perforated lines. Well, it's not quite as pretty as I'd hoped, but you can see I made a whole bunch of cuts and perforations, even made a few holes every once in a while to hopefully create the perfect core that I need for the Glasspack. Next thing I got to do is cut out and put in these end plates, and then we cut out these center section. But to do that, I'm going to be using this 55-gallon barrel that I picked up from a salvage yard for about $10 or so. I'm going to hack this thing up and see if I can use it to build the other part of the muffler.
To begin with, I knew I wanted my muffler to be 16 inches long, so I measured out a 16-inch long section, and then I rep tape measure around to measure out a 22-inch perimeter around the muffler. Now later on, I ended up using this seam on the barrel itself to help square everything up. It seemed to do the trick pretty well. Afterwards, I got a piece of the barrel, flattened it out so I could make the end plates. But for the main body, I tried rolling over the part, but it was really stiff and hard to do. So I figured I'd have to leave this for a little bit later on down the road when I actually connect everything together. But to make the end plates, I got an old paint can. It's actually measured 6.5 inches in diameter, but still close enough. Use that to trace the outside. And for the inner portion, I had a piece of 4-inch pipe sitting around, so I used that to mark it. Now certainly if you don't have a cutting torch to cut out the sheet metal, a hammer and chisel will work just fine, but I had a cutting torch and it went a lot quicker, so I just used that to cut out my end plates. I used a Sharpie to mark where I needed to trim the end plates to make sure the 4-inch pipe would fit, and then using a file, I just filed them down until I got the desired size. Now after that was all taken care of, I was able to finally start tacking it onto the pipe. Welding everything together really proved to be quite a challenge, because the sheet metal I had was very much thinner than the 4-inch tubing itself, so I ended up burning holes through it quite a bit. I tried using a torch, but that didn't really work. The material was a bit too dirty and big gaps to fill. I ended up using this really kind of odd technique. I ended up using a MIG welder and a piece of wire, secondary piece, to help absorb a lot of the heat so I wouldn't burn holes through it, and that seemed to work alright.
Alright, so now for the fun part, I'm actually going to get out my fiberglass and see if I can wrap this around. Went ahead and got these things all together. Probably some of the prettiest welds I've done, but you know what, they count. Alright, so I'm going to see if I can start wrapping this. I want this thing to be pretty tight. Now I did end up going with a slightly smaller size. I ended up using, oh shoot, paint cans basically as the end. So originally I'd intended to use 7.5 inch or 7 inch as the outside diameter of this pipe, but it'll just be a little bit more packed, and it should be fine with the 6.5, which is what I originally calculated. I just kind of overshot it by going with 7, so this should work. Okay, put that around, and now let's see if I can start putting the packing, or putting the wrapping around the packing. Alright, so I ended up running into an issue. I couldn't quite get this thing to bend all the way, but what I might do is get out my torch, not my cutting torch, but my propane burner, and see if I can use that to heat it up and bend it enough. Then I'm going to go ahead and see if I can put some tack welds on here to just hold it down and see if I can get this thing started.
I also ran into troubles when I was trying to wrap around the outer shell. The material is still quite thick and it still had those ribs in it, which made bending it really hard. So here you can see I was kind of holding it down, and it's just me. I ended up having to get creative, and I used a set of ratchet straps towards the end to kind of help hold it all together. Turned out pretty ugly, but technically it works. And last but not least, I ended up getting a hammer and chisel, and I used that to kind of cut a little small slit in the very bottom of the muffler. That way any water that might accumulate would have a chance to drain out.
Alright, well, I'm back underneath the truck, and well, certainly the muffler is about as ugly as it gets, but you can see at 6.5 inches overall diameter, this thing is just barely clearing everything here. And hopefully this homemade Glasspack muffler will work. Now for the moment of truth, let's start it up and hope it doesn't fall off and see how this sucker performs. That's significantly quieter. Oh my goodness. I'll say it actually is doing something. Well guys, that pretty much does it for today's video on building a homemade Glasspack. If you have any recommendations, any criticisms, or anything of that sort, please also let me know in that comment box so I can hopefully cater my videos to more of what you guys are wanting to watch. And that goes for pretty much anything in general. If you see anything in these videos that seems like it could be improved, something that you want to see more of, then just let me know in the comment box so that I can hopefully help you guys out and more cater to what you want to watch. In the meantime, I really hope you all enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. In the meantime, you have a good one.